It's a third line day today. We are in gate 6, the gate of conflict and friction in the third line, and it is called allegiance. We know by now that the 59 and the 6 are both roll gates. So every single one of the 6 variations in these gates give us all the possible genetic variations that are available to us. It's out of these 2 gates that we create the genetic matrix of life. When we get to the third line, we get to the end of the lower trigram. We get to the line of adaptation, and this is the first line that is really able to meet the other side, bump into the other side, make bonds and then break them with the other side. This is the end of that lower trigram process. And in that, the third line can bring with it the introspection from the first line, and the projection of the second line can be very fertile when it makes contact with the other side. The wave of this line is called allegiance and rejection. It's making bonds and breaking them. So this line then is called allegiance, and we have a lifetime learning, and it says the ability to secure support and create strength out of a weak position. When connected to the harmonic 59, mating that results in conception. This is a deeply fertile line. There used to be a joke years ago, I did the rounds, I haven't heard it for a while, but about pandas, panda bears, having a nice dinner with their partner and doing the dance of love, and then just heading off out the door afterwards. Pandas, eats, shoots, and leaves. And this third line in the 6th gate, bonds made and broken, these are the people that visit, they deposit their genetic material, and then they go. In the exaltation, we have the destruction of old forms through union, either mundane, as above, sexual union, or exalted as universalization, the depth of feelings that can enrich union and intimacy. This is like serious bonds made and broken here. This is there for genetic continuity, and this is a bad place to try and build a stable relationship. Bonds made and broken. Bonds made and broken is part of the genetic strategy that is going to be there in resonance to the 6th line. It's what happens. It's what happens when you go into intimacy. Here in the 3rd line, it's all about the fact that we have to make sure that the gene pool is full of the unusual. I can throw a few people in, so that we are able to survive whatever future evolution is going to bring us. So this 3rd line of allegiance is about the destruction of old forms through union. It's not bringing in the same old genetic material that you've always had in your tribe. This is about bringing in some really new blood, new information. Usually, traditionally, Raju said it was always like somebody like the traveling salesman or the milkman, someone like that. It's that sort of mundane sexual union, but it's diverse. It's necessary for our genetic code to have had this kind of input. These are not necessarily people who could live together, but their genetic contribution is still necessary. And the need for that genetic material is demanded by the program. We have a lot of women who have children from different men, and a lot of men that have children from different women. We have this whole mixing of our genetic process now. Truly, it's part of the program. It's nothing to be taken seriously. It's a mechanic. There's no morality in human design. It's really just what's happening. And it's really interesting to see it when you watch how it plays out through what's happened in the world. It's that, I'll come to something in a minute when we've looked at the detriment. So in the detriment, we have the rejection of allegiance as submission to an established order. Sensitivity to controls which may eventually reject intimacy. Now, 3rd line people never really appreciate control. They will always be sensitive to control. When they're at the high end of their wave, but they don't really care. Doesn't matter so much. But when they're at the low end of their wave, it does matter. You know, this is an important thing to recognize for people who have this line. You know, somebody at the high end of the wave can submit themselves to the established order, to the bargain of the relationship. And at the low end of the wave, they will totally reject that. This is a genetic strategy to make sure that there is genetic diversity, which means that it can be a very difficult thing to handle when it comes to intimate relationships. There were a couple of generations of women who carried this very powerfully in their design over a long term, as Pluto was active in this gate between 1966 and 1969, on and off, going in and out, retrograding and things. You know, there were years of babies coming in with Pluto in gate 6. Ra said that if you want to find the line of women's lib, this is it. Which isn't to say it didn't have an effect on men, of course it did. But for men, it just kind of reinforced their capacity to move from one partner to another partner. Whereas for women, it kind of established their authority to dictate whether a relationship should last or not. You know, it gave them a new power, and it also brought about an enormous amount of divorce. This is the rejection of allegiance. When we're looking at third lines, whatever gate it happens to be in, it's important to recognize that the third line of breaking bonds, it doesn't mean the bond cannot be made again. It just means that there must be space. Well, third line intimacy requires space. Ra had a partnership with a 59-3 that lasted over 15 years. And of those 15 years, he was away for about 11 of them. And yet still it worked. He said it wouldn't have worked otherwise. Bonds made and broken could mean that you go out the door and you say, this is over, I'm never coming back. And you never come back. But that's not really what this is. It's more along the lines of, I've had enough of you for now. I'm going. And when I come back, it will be great again. And then I'll have had enough of you and I'll be going off again. And it's that toing and froing, you know, making and breaking, making and breaking. If you live according to your mechanic, you can have a relationship regardless of your design, what kind of design you have. So many potentially beautiful relationships, you know, relationships that could have enormous value to you in your life, are abandoned out of a lack of understanding. The relationships that work are those based on understanding of the nature of your partner, so that you can accept that nature, because it's not up to you why they're the way they are, why they're in your face or not in your face. You don't have any control over that. It's geometry. There's no choice in that at all. You wake up every morning, you see the same person. That's a kind of love, kind of, whether you like it or not, because that's the mystery. You know, somebody keeps staying there in your geometry. You don't know why they're there. You don't know if they're going to stay because you don't know why they came in the first place. The grounding comes here in the 36-3. It's called transition, which is quite funny when you consider what we've been hearing about the panda, always in transition from one meal to the next or one lover to the next. And it's all okay because it's just a mechanic after all. You know, if we're living in the conditioning field of the not self, then it's maybe not so okay. It can actually be really painful. Oh my God, relationships are truly where the rubber meets the road, aren't they? In the true self, then wow, what an experience that can be. And I don't claim to be an expert, truly, I don't. But with that 59-3, I've had some resonance to this, really. And I can tell you that a relationship built on this knowledge of human design is completely different from the ones that I experienced before human design. Bear and I have our differences, for sure, but we have a way of navigating them that doesn't take us down the paths of conditioning that we both experienced previously. And also, he's a polar bear more than a panda bear. He doesn't leave, if you know what I mean. Mercury. Mercury moved into gate 64 at 6:38 this morning, the gate of confusion. We know about this from a couple of transits ago. Now, this is that abstract mental pressure trying to make sense of the memories of experiences of the past. It can be very confusing. You may want to keep an eye on the news this next week or so, see if there's any extra focus on this. Mind you, the news is always a little bit confusing, I find, so how are you going to tell? The moon is in gate 30 for a little while longer, the gate of feelings, where we can learn to recognize feelings that lead to the potential for change, whether they fulfill our dreams or not. By entering into experiences guided by inner authority, we can avoid the burnout and disappointment that follows from acting blindly. Next, we have gate 55 at 10:50. So very soon, as I'm recording this. The moon brings a focus here on the gate of abundance, the gate of spirit. Is our cup half full or half empty? This is individuality. This is where we find the emotional wave of hope to pain. This is possibly quite moody, but this is where we can be aware that there is no need to find reasons for our moods. We don't have to justify them. It's just chemistry. The gate of the family and friendship is next. That's gate 37 at 19:53. This is tribal, of course. Gate of the mouth, the gate of kissing. The gate with a strong sense of community and an open and friendly disposition that easily engages with others and enables one to hold the family and community structure together. Very sticky loyalty, support and bargains, all very sticky stuff, but they're all big factors here in this gate 37. And gate 63 is our last moon gate today at 4:53, the gate of doubt, with one of my favorite headlines: in the spiral of life, all ends are beginnings. This is a gate that likes to say why. Indeed, it has a mental pressure to say why and to keep on saying why. It's searching for logical answers that can be validated and relied on in order to feel secure as we move forward into the future. So that's our third line in gate 6. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, I wish you well. I send you love, and I will see you for the 4th line tomorrow. Until then, go gently.